J. Molley's story begins not with controversy, but with potential. When he first stepped into the South African hip-hop scene, he was more than just another rapper chasing clout. He was a young visionary who carried himself like a rock star in the making. His music stood out immediately, melodic, vulnerable, and draped in the hazy, futuristic soundscape of the SoundCloud era. He wasn't trying to be a traditional lyricist in the vein of older hip-hop heads, nor was he simply copying the styles of American rappers. Instead, he built an aesthetic that blended emotion with swagger, pain with bravado. For a generation of teenagers scrolling SoundCloud late at night, he represented something new, someone they could project their dreams onto. The early videos, the lifestyle, the energy, it all seemed to suggest that J. Molley was destined for greatness, but fame has a way of magnifying everything, both the brilliance and the flaws. Very quickly, the cracks began to show. J. Molley projected himself as untouchable, a fearless figure who wasn't afraid to speak his mind. And while that attitude can create legends in hip-hop, it can also create enemies. For Molley, it seemed to create more of the latter. His feuds with fellow artists became headline material, but instead of building hype around his music, they distracted from it. In an industry where beefs can turn into career-defining moments, his came across as messy, uncalculated, and personal. What should have been opportunities to showcase his dominance ended up reinforcing a narrative of immaturity. Each feud chipped away at the respect he had built, leaving fans wondering if he was fighting to prove himself or just lashing out. If you are enjoying this video up to this point, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. That helps me a lot, thank you. Behind the scenes, his mental health battles became part of his public persona. J. Molley spoke openly about depression, anxiety, and suicidal thoughts, something few rappers at the time were brave enough to address. In some ways, this honesty endeared him to fans, painting him as a vulnerable artist unafraid to share his pain. But vulnerability in the public eye is a double-edged sword. The more he leaned into it, the more critics accused him of using it as an excuse for his inconsistency. Cancelled shows, sudden disappearances from the spotlight, and unpredictable outbursts on social media began to paint a troubling picture. Instead of being seen as a misunderstood creative struggling with his demons, he was increasingly perceived as unreliable. In a cutthroat industry, reliability is everything, and without it, even the most gifted artists can find themselves sidelined. The controversies didn't stop there. J. Molley's brand was heavily tied to the lifestyle he flaunted, fast living, flashy aesthetics, and a sense of rebellion against the system. At first, this image was magnetic, especially to younger fans. But as time went on, the same lifestyle that attracted attention began to feel hollow. Rumors swirled about reckless behavior, strained relationships, and fallouts with collaborators. The perception grew that he wasn't just battling the pressures of fame but actively sabotaging his own career. And when fans sense that an artist isn't fully invested in their craft, their respect begins to evaporate. Music, at the end of the day, has always been the foundation of respect in hip-hop. But in Molley's case, the music became secondary to the drama. Projects that should have been defining moments were overshadowed by headlines about his personal life. Instead of anticipation, there was skepticism. Instead of trust in his artistry, there was doubt about his stability. Even when he released good music, it was difficult for fans to separate it from the noise surrounding his name. The very thing that should have cemented his legacy, the music, was drowned out by the controversies. It's important to understand that J. Molley's fall from grace wasn't sudden. It was gradual, like a slow fade rather than a dramatic collapse. Each misstep, each controversy, each absence from the spotlight chipped away at his credibility. And over time, the respect that had once surrounded his name eroded. People didn't stop respecting J. Molley because he lacked talent. They stopped respecting him because the talent was buried under inconsistency, controversy, and self-destruction. In the brutal arena of hip-hop, where fans and peers demand resilience, he seemed unable or unwilling to meet those demands, yet his story carries a deeper meaning beyond just one artist's struggles. J. Molley represents the fragile nature of modern fame. In the digital era, artists can rise to prominence almost overnight, but the same speed applies to their downfall. Online platforms amplify both success and controversy, and public opinion can shift in an instant. For J. Molley, the same platforms that once celebrated him became arenas where his flaws were magnified. What began as a promising career turned into a cautionary tale about what happens when the pressure of fame collides with personal demons and poor choices. Today, when people discuss J. Molley, the conversation is rarely about his music. It's about what happened to him, about the potential he wasted, about the controversies that define him more than his artistry. He went from being one of the most exciting young voices in South African hip-hop to a figure many fans and critics dismiss. Respect in music is not just about talent, it is about consistency, humility, and the ability to rise above adversity. J. Molley's downfall illustrates what happens when those qualities are missing, but the story isn't necessarily over. If he chose to rebuild, to focus on the music rather than the chaos, to reclaim the narrative rather than let it define him, there's still a chance for redemption. Hip-hop loves a comeback story as much as it loves a downfall. The question is whether J. Molley is willing to rewrite his own story, or whether he will remain a symbol of wasted potential. For now, his name serves as a reminder of how quickly the respect of fans and peers can vanish, and how fragile the line between promise and downfall truly is.